All right, we are live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great week here so far. And thank you all so much for stopping by. So like all these usual midweek live streams, we're going to go for 1 hour. I'll give priority answering, and then anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames, they always get that priority answering. If you'd like that as well, you can always check out the link in the description to get all of that. And so just turning on all my stuff here, and so I see we have Brian, Still Buster, Lancewath, and Luke, Mr. 705, Kevin, and Vishal that all have stopped by so far. Thanks so much, everyone. And I see Brian saying happy Wednesday. And Still Buster says, hey, all car spots this week are a Buick Grand National, a wood panel PT Cruiser, and a Dodge Intrepid RT. Wow, that's a rare one. AMC Javelin and a 1950s Rolls Royce. Wow, all very impressive spots. That's awesome. But I mean, that Intrepid RT, I don't know if I've ever actually seen an Intrepid RT in this century. That's quite the spot. Congrats, Stillbuster. And Lancelot says, good evening. My spot so far this week is an early 90s silver Toyota Celica GT. That's another very nice spot. That's awesome. I really haven't seen anything notable, really. I think I've seen a few poorly driving Teslas, but that's about it. Nothing notable for me. But Stillbuster says, if you could have a second chance at one event in your life, what would you choose? Man, that is a deep question. Well, we'll keep it to the YouTube channel in particular, because that doesn't get too, personal and all that. I think, with the channel, I think I wish that I had better planning. I think looking back, I never took the channel seriously in the early years. That's why it was Subaru Durix fan for so long. That's not a professional brand name that you should be building your brand on, and I think I lost a little bit of momentum with the switchover, which now at this point is crazy to think was like 8 years ago. But I think that I probably could have, grown my career and all that even faster if I had, planned it well from the get-go instead of just kind of winging it as I went. But I mean, when I made the channel, I was 16, and whenever I started posting videos regularly, I was just a college kid. I wasn't focused on it as a career, because back then it really couldn't have been a career. It wasn't until the late 2000s and early 2010s before you could start making some real money on there. And but it's still just, if I would have gone into it thinking like this is going to be something bigger someday, I feel like I would have done a little bit better with planning it. And I also do regret the Fund Anything campaign for the EcoBoost too. That's one thing that I think really kind of soured a lot of people on the channel way back when. And it's something, I was so close to getting a Fiesta ST way back then instead of the Mustang EcoBoost. I'm happy I did, and I'm so grateful so many of you did support that. And I think it was a great journey. It was fun. It was the first Mustang I ever had, and I think owning the turbo one, I'm happy that I did. I think it was a really cool gateway to go from the turbo Subaru and that into turbo Mustang. It was kind of a fun switch. But I think in hindsight, because I know that just that whole thing was a little too forward thinking with crowdfunding things for content, I think that's something that, looking back, and I also just regret not getting a Fiesta ST in general, because I think they're really fun little cars, and I think that would have been a really fun thing to try, and that would have allowed me to avoid the whole just I think I wish I would have even done that instead of the Mini. But I think even just going from the Mini to the Fiesta would have been fun, and then waiting until the proper Bullet arrived, or just even the GT once I could have afforded it, could have been the better way to go about that. But hindsight's 2020. But as far as the two channel regrets, I think those are probably the two biggest things that I'd love to go back and change and do things differently. And obviously now, knowing what we know, I mean, there's all kinds of other stuff. I wish I would have bought Bitcoin in 2010. Be a multi-millionaire and have all the dream cars I've always dreamed of. I mean, so that's a pretty easy one as far as going back in time. If I ever find a time machine, first thing I'm doing is if I'm going back to, late 2000s, is hurry up and buy as much Bitcoin as I can get my hands on while it's still, going for the same amount of money as a pizza. But anyway, very, very deep and cool question there, still a buster. And Luke says, sorry, not cars, but I'm excited to get new vinyl siding and Shrek steps on my house next month. That's awesome. Well, congrats on the upcoming little upgrades there. That's always exciting. And yeah, just, aside from modifying your car, modifying your house, I feel like is, can be almost as much fun, and you're actually experiencing it, probably far more than your car. So that's awesome. Congrats, Luke. And Lancelot says his regret would be to not sell the 87 Mustang GT he had. Yeah, that's stuff like that. Cars that I wish I could have gotten back. That's the other thing. I wish I would have been able to afford to hang on to everything that I had and have the space to hang on to everything that I had. Because yeah, I'd love to have basically everything back. Although the Mini probably would have just continued to bury me in maintenance costs, but everything else though, I mean, I missed them all, even the Mini. And let me see, 705 saying hello from Ontario. Thanks for stopping by. And I see Still Buster says he regrets selling his 1990 Celica as well. That was his first car. And Kevin says, good evening. Good evening to you, Kevin. Vishal says, someone in my neighborhood got an Escalade V ESV. So that's my spot so far. That's awesome. Well, yeah, that's quite the spot. And hopefully they're not waking you up too much. Hopefully they're not too close to you, because otherwise those cold starts are going to make sure that no one sleeps past whenever that person leaves their house. But that's awesome. The Fishy Tank Land says hello from Denver. And Michael says, rip Charlie Kirk. Yeah, that's crazy. And it's, one of those things where, like, anytime these things happen, which is a daily basis here in America, just violence isn't the answer. And, but, that's what we put up with in America. People don't want to change it, and the politicians don't want to change it. So this is the daily news, business as usual, unfortunately. Maybe someday we'll try and find a better way to go about things. But anyway, Dozier says base Nissan Leaf, maybe 26 grand, release sometime in 2026. Yeah, probably. I don't know if it'll go that low, because it's, including destination, just barely over, was it 31, I think? Or I think it's 29,995, right, for the S. All right, yeah, the like, not the one up from the base. So I think base, it depends how much they decontent, but I doubt they're going to go that low. I mean, if I had just, judging how other things are priced as far as their lowest trim compared to the next level up, I don't have all the data in the top of my head here, but I would say, maybe 26 before destination, and then, maybe close to 28 after destination. But they might try and go super aggressive. And if they can advertise, 24,995 before destination or something like that, that could really make some good headlines. So if they can push it to that point, I think there's room for it. Obviously, Slate has shown us that there's an appetite for base bare bones stuff. And, I think they should cost cut the Nissan Leaf as much as they possibly can as far as decontenting goes, and try and get it down to, whatever price they can. I mean, that one is the one that's going to have the smaller battery, the lesser amount of power. And those are expensive things. So you might be on the money there. We'll have to see. I'm excited. I don't know if they said exactly when that's coming. They just said later in the model year, right? But I'm hoping we don't have to wait too long for that, because the sooner, it gets more affordable, the better. I mean, it's starting at a great starting point already, but, can always, the cheaper, the better. So I'm excited for that. And I'm really excited to test out the Nissan Leaf. I hope that I get to review one fairly soon. I don't know if they just had a recent drive thing or if that's still coming up, but I'm very excited to try out the new Leaf. And Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, do you think there'll be an ICE rate on Ford, GM, or Dodge factories? Hyundai is dominating several segments. If you don't want to respond, it's okay. Who knows what ICE is going to do next? Yeah, so, I mean, it comes down to, I guess, if they think there's, workers. But I mean, it seems like, it doesn't even matter. They just, take people that are legally here too, and then sort it out later. So, yeah, I won't get into that too much, because that could be a whole nother thing. But it's, that whole thing has been a big fallout this week, though, with Hyundai. And you tell companies to invest in America, and then you bring in the people who need to be there to get the whole thing up and running. Like these were people that were here temporarily to just help get this factory off the ground. And the just it's straight up stupid. It's just to not look into this before you do this. It's this like arrest first, ask questions later mentality. And you can't tell a company, hey, invest hundreds of millions of dollars, and then by the way, we're going to treat the people that are there to help that investment get off the ground, we're going to arrest those people. Like it's just, and even if they're immediately released, it's just like that's a terrifying thing to have happen. And it's traumatizing, it's scarring for life, it's terrible. So I mean, like, it's just, I mean, it sounds like there's already some real blowback in South Korea. It sounds like both sides of the political parties there are like, really not happy with America over that, and rightly so. And so, I think it's going to discourage foreign companies from investing. And I mean, I'll just leave it at that, I guess. But you don't encourage people to work with you if you're arresting their workers that are legally here to help get things going. So anyway, appreciate the super chat there, Jordan. We'll try and keep it as light as possible here tonight, though. But let me see. So Jorge, thank you so much for stopping by. He says best spot this week, AutoZam AZ1. Very nice. Never been in my Miata and felt like I was driving a tank until last weekend. My youngest and I were so surprised we cackled. That's so funny. Oh man, yeah. I think I've seen one a long time ago. But I don't know if I've actually. Yeah, you know what? I think someone actually had one when I was in college and I saw one. That would have probably been before the 25-year import thing, but I feel like I've seen one at some point somewhere. I don't remember where, but they are wild. And it's so fun on those little K cars. I can't imagine the blast that thing has got to be to drive. But that's really cool. You spotted one. I haven't seen one in a long time. So that's a very impressive spot in my book. And I'm happy you had that fun memory there with your child as well. That's awesome, Jorge. And Lancelot, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships here. I really appreciate that, and happy to see some familiar faces there and also some new ones able to get those memberships. And hopefully that means, I think DC Texas was here on Sunday chatting, so hopefully he's able to join in and chat with us here, and everyone else as well too. But thanks so much for the generosity, Lancelot. And let me see. So other questions here. So Lancelot says, I also saw a BMW Coupe, but it was debadged, so I couldn't tell what it was. Nice. Yeah. Well, it's always can go either way with that kind of stuff. I feel like most people that have impressive stuff usually leave the badges on. But then there's also a lot of people that throw M badges on stuff that shouldn't have M badges. So if it's debadged, I guess it's a mystery, and that's what they want it to be. That's funny. And Jordan says, I wasn't a big fan of the intro music on the old videos. No disrespect. That's fine. Yeah. And that's one of the things, that's why I, oftentimes, say, like, I think, getting rid of that stuff, a lot of people really loved it. And even like the little techno, songs that I included in a lot of the reviews, way back when, like a lot of people, well, not a lot, a few people every once in a while will comment that they miss that. But that was another thing where I just, it's polarizing, and trying to, again, get rid of all the polarizing aspects of the channel as best as possible, while still, again, having some edge, and also, making my comments very blunt and honest and all that, but trying my best to, just make it a little more palatable for everyone is part of the reason why that went away. It also was a bunch of extra work to every review, find an awesome song, cut the shots to it, and all that. It was, a lot of work. So I'm glad you don't miss them, Jordan. And Mr. 705 says, do you ever consider moving in the beginning or later on to a location better suited for car content? Oh, did I ever? That's a great question. I did consider it. There was a point right around 2013 where I very strongly considered moving to LA. It got so far, in fact, that me and a buddy of mine who were going to, like split an apartment or something out there, we actually went out and went apartment hunting, and we're kind of building connections. We've also both were had aspirations of possibly getting into the acting world. So like we went to a casting director's party, and we just we're kind of looking around at where we'd like to live, and what we'd want to do, and so that's that actually was a fairly serious hunt there. And he ended up actually moving out there for several years. I couldn't justify the leap, just because partially the channel was doing really well and it could have done better in LA, but that's a big risk. And back then I wasn't full time on the channel. It was still just a part-time thing. It wasn't making enough money for me to live off of entirely. And so it was a little bit more of a leap than I was comfortable making. And I love acting, and I always, that's always in the back of my head, is something that would be fun to get into. But it's just so, I mean, that's, it's very, very much a 1 in a million kind of thing to make it, to any real extent in the acting world. And, I was able to kind of do my fun little stuff of being an extra. And, I actually will have more to discuss about that. I'm not able to talk about it, but I was actually able to get back into being an extra, and I'll be able to talk more about that next year. But that's something that's I always will love, and something I hope to continue to do a little bit and dabble with on the side. But yeah, other than LA, never really thought about moving anywhere else. There's nowhere else that really appealed to me more than Pittsburgh. Obviously, Pittsburgh's not a great place, but the other places where journalists typically live are just not places that I felt at home in. And LA was a place where I really did feel very comfortable and would have really enjoyed it, at least, back then. And so, but yeah, I just wasn't able to make the leap. And, honestly, I'm kind of happy I didn't, because yes, you have better press cars out there, and maybe there's a little bit less travel from coast to coast, because, a lot of the stuff is on the West Coast typically. But, I'm so happy everything worked out the way it did. If I would have moved, I wouldn't have met Beth. Obviously, we wouldn't have had our daughter, and would have been away from my family that I'm very close with and all that. So, it's one of those things. I think it worked out for the best. And I'm still able to have my fun on set, here that I'll be able to do occasionally too. So, I think it's all good. But great question, Mr. 705. And El Hokage says, would you consider starting a podcast? I actually considered the weekly updates a podcast. They were classified as such on YouTube. And, when you look at a lot of video podcasts, my weekly updates were kind of set up the same way. It was me talking, some B-roll, and that's pretty much it. So I think that was a podcast. Unfortunately, it was a podcast that failed. It just got crushed by Doug's new one, that came out this year, and others. And people just lost appetite in car news. People don't like the way the car industry is going. People have less interest in new cars, and so it just unfortunately died off. And I don't think there's any other room for me to do any kind of other podcast. There's so many podcasts out there, and if you have some unique take or some unique perspective that hasn't amazingly been covered already by the zillions of other podcasters, that it just, there's no, and I also think these are also kind of podcasts. They're Q&As, but, I think it's also just, oftentimes me just talking cars and rambling and whatever. And that's often what podcasts are. So I think, for a lot of people, especially, if you've YouTube Premium, you can listen to these as audio only. I know a lot of people say they just kind of put this on in the background and they go around and do housework or whatever. I think this is kind of a podcast in and of itself. So I think this kind of, does that. And, in the future, if people would like to see this in an audio only form on some other format that they can consume easier than YouTube, I'm happy to download the audio from these podcasts and rip it and toss it onto, Apple Music or wherever you put up a podcast, Apple Podcasts, I guess, Spotify, whatever. If that'd be easier for some people, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to see what's going on screen here with the comments and stuff, but for those who are content to just listen to me babble. And I mean, I do read each comment, so that would be a fine conversion. If that's something people are interested in, I'd be more than happy to do that. But anything beyond what I'm already doing, I'm just too maxed out to add anything more. And podcasts are very hard to monetize and do successfully these days. And let me see. I think let me get my mouse to work here. So Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, would you ever consider owning a healthy BMW i8? I actually did see an i8 recently, and they're great cars. I reviewed one, way back when, and I loved it. It was great. So I personally, I still just like don't love, the electrical components are, just used European stuff always, is a little bit worrisome to me. But I do really like the i8 and what it stood for of being, kind of a sporty car that didn't have to be a gas guzzler and was very forward thinking. I think the styling still looks great. And yeah, I really like the i8. It's not a car that I really aspire to own. If it was a 4-seater with the convertible version, that could maybe, be a little bit appealing, but honestly, like, no, there's just so many other cars I'd rather have for the same money. But I do love the i8. I think it's a really cool car for those who, do want it over all the other stuff out there. And thank you so much, Jordan, for the super chat. And Chad, thank you so much for being a member for 15 months now. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad you and Jordan are both able to stop by tonight. He says, guy that works for me ruined his BMW key fob. It cost him $400 to replace. I did a quick search and to see if he ever charged, but that's reasonable, crazy. Yeah, I'm not sure. It depends on the generation and how advanced the key fob was with, all the buttons it had or didn't have, or how nice of the key fob it was. But yeah, key fobs aren't cheap, that's for sure. And maybe there's a way to get it, outside of the dealer if you can, find one on eBay or something like that, maybe be a little bit cheaper. But yeah, you don't want to lose a key fob; they're pricey. And also, even just getting the coding done, and then also like if it's one of the ones that has a backup physical key in it, like getting that laser cut isn't cheap still. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. So yeah, it's definitely not something you want to lose. And let me see. Thank you so much again, Jordan or Chad, for being a member for 15 months now. And let me see. Where were we here? So Danny says, hello, haven't driven this week yet, but rare spot was a white 1999 base model Subaru Impreza that was mint with little to no rust. Shocker. That is impressive, especially in New Jersey. That's pretty impressive. So they must have imported from somewhere else or something. That's awesome. And Mr. 705 says, I was someone who donated to the Mustang and always thought it was a good idea. I'm not sure why people were negative about it. Yeah, I mean, I polled people, way back when. I mean, at this point, it was 11 years ago. I polled people and, the majority were really in support of it. It's just, the very vocal minority is usually, is where that, comes from. But I mean, I understood, there's a lot of, hate comments. I'm just like, okay, these people are just having bad days or whatever. But like with that, especially, in that time period that was in, I know a lot of people were fine with it. And a lot of other YouTubers outside of the car world were doing stuff like that already. But I know for the car niche, that was something that, I think was just something people weren't ready for. And, again, it is what it is. I very much appreciate those of you who, again, support me way back when with that. And yeah, I really appreciate that because that was one of the times when I needed the support the most, especially just, not even just like the actual campaign, but just the support of the comments and stuff. It because that one, that hit me hard. I mean, that was really, really hard to endure. And yeah, so I very much appreciate everyone's support back then. And hopefully, it was worth it too. I mean, there was a lot of content. I was one of the first to, mod an EcoBoost and, show all the different, basic bolt-on, cob access port stuff, lowering springs, all those kinds of things. Exhaust. I think I had the first prototype of the cob exhaust that they did. There's all those kinds of things that I think I was able to kind of show what that platform can do with the typical bolt-ons and stuff. And so I think it hopefully was a good contribution to the car community and people. I mean, I did about 100 videos, I think, on that car. So hopefully it was, something that people felt they got, their money's worth, their value out of that content. But yeah, that was the first and last time I'll ever yeah, do any kind of crowdfunding like that for a car project. Obviously, we have the memberships now, and that's completely normal. And YouTube, in fact, pushes that, but that was not the case way back when, and again, a lot less acceptable than it is these days. But one of the good things, or one of the things where it's not good to be ahead of the curve. But yeah, it is what it is. You live and you learn. But Danny says maybe because of the reputation they've gotten for being crowd killers with the Mustang. No, I think it was just that this was just, people just were opposed to, asking for money to do content was the bottom line as far as the opposition there. And Luke says, in a world of cars, people often regret people who bought enthusiast cars when they were young and grow up and say, I wish I thought more practical. And people who had Camrys think, I wish I had more fun. Yeah, it's always grass is greener kind of thing for sure with car purchases. But I think a lot of people do miss whatever it is they had, even if it wasn't a fun car. Just your first car is a special thing, and even just a lot of people, like myself, get sentimental with any car. This is why the junkyard videos, whenever I'm going around, I'm like, oh, like I'm trying to not be sad about it, but it's like all these cars were, these brand new cars. It was someone's, pride and joy, and it's. I'm one of these people that I don't enjoy seeing cars destroyed. I don't like watching demolition derbies. I don't like watching cars get crushed. It just it unfortunately just makes me a little sad because I feel sentimental about every car that's lived a life, that's carried people safely and reliably, and been dependable and taken people on adventures, and all the other things that cars do for us. But yeah, anyway, and Jordan, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, vehicle control by phone or app, personal cyber risk, and does the vehicle have some type of internet built in? How does that work? So as far as if you're talking about the basic functions for an app of like unlocking the car, things like that, that is as much of a cyber risk as any of these other connected devices or, connected stuff in your home, things like that. The cars do have built-in modems, like cellular modems. And so it works the same way as, any kind of other thing in a phone or something does. There is also onboard Wi-Fi with a lot of cars, but that's usually separate. That's just to have, the people in the car, get the internet. But yeah, there are modems, and that's, part of, these connected services that, you have to pay for eventually. That's kind of one of the big pushes for this, is to monetize used vehicles beyond the point of sale, because if you want to have all these nice features, if you want to have your remote start, if you want to have all this other stuff, these nice features, you have to, eventually pay for that. There's free trials for all this stuff, but having a cell plan isn't free. And so that's, the one thing that, is it a cyber risk? I mean, everything's a cyber risk, literally everything can be hacked. Everything is iffy. And, even if it's not connected, obviously car theft has been a thing before any of the cyber stuff. And, there's very few cars that actually have everything connected. And I think even, for example, like Blue Cruise, it's a hands-free driving thing. Blue Cruise is only connected to the internet, I believe, in order to understand that the car is subscribed to it to unlock that feature. But I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I don't believe there's a way for, someone to hack into a Mach-E and then steer it with, and take over Blue Cruise or anything. I don't think there's any capability there. I don't think the framework is there to even make that possible. I could be wrong once again, but I think the damage is limited to locking and unlocking, just the things that the app can do. So yeah, sure. There's a potential there. You can unlock it, you can, start it or whatever, and do those types of things. But we're already seeing, even just, regular theft is already bad enough. And, so I don't think it's going to make things worse, really. And I think typically a lot of that stuff's encrypted, so it's even harder than the easier ways to steal cars, like the key repeater devices that everyone uses on the Hellcats and stuff like that. That's a far easier way to do it. So I think that's really going to still be the main issue as far as vehicle risk. But great question, Jordan. Thanks for asking. And let me see. So where were we here? So um, Vishal says there are a few streets over with the Escalade Visa, not too close at least. Still trippy to hear an Escalade sound like a Corvette. It is trippy for sure, and it's so fun the mismatch. But it actually really is very much fitting in my opinion. And I think they did a nice job of amping up the outside of the Escalade too to make it match. And I see Alex 23 says, "What car do you own currently?" I have a Fiat 500e, a 2024 that I picked up back in February. We also have now a Cadillac Lyriq 2025 that we got just back in the end of July here. So those are the two cars right now. And let me see. So Austin says, "I heard Hyundai had no idea about those arrested employees." Initially, well, I mean, they were just regular people that were there. Like a lot of these factories have, people that come in, and I mean, every car company that is foreign based, they always have people coming in. I mean, even on the media drives, on a Toyota media drive, there's people there from Japan. Like that's just normal. And like, I can actually, I had a conversation with an employee from a car company that was foreign, and this was earlier this year. And she's like, I have my passport everywhere I go, and all my documents to, make sure I can prove that I'm here and I should be here. But like, and I apologize to her. I'm like, I'm so sorry that is like the way you have to live your life, just trying to do your job, for a few months here. You're here for, car launch, you're here for this, that, the other, and you have to be terrified and be looking over your shoulder. Like, how is that good? I don't know. Anyway, I won't get into it, but it's just I've talked to real people, at car companies that have that concern, and it's unfortunate. That's people, and this is why tourism is completely cratered this year, for a variety of reasons, but also just because you see the stories of random people just coming in for a vacation and ending up getting sent to God knows where, and it's just, yeah, it's ridiculous. But anyway, Vishal says, "Saw a Reddit post where someone went to an Integra meet in their 2023 model and was denied entry because they were told you don't have a real Integra. The meet had 90s." Or early 90s and early 2000s Integras. People are jerks. That is crazy. And that's not the car community. The car community, at least the way that I understand it, is usually very inclusive, pretty, open-minded as far as cars goes. That just sounds like a really crappy group. Integra really blows my mind, because I don't know what what did they expect to make? Like, what would make a new Integra a real Integra? Like, and we've been over this a million times, so I won't rant forever. But like, Integra was always a nicer Civic. It was always a nicer Civic. What is it now? A nicer Civic. It was always a hatchback and was offered in a four-door version. Like, it's more close to the forebears than most other cars that have revived a name and used it. I mean, it is exactly what, if they had never discontinued Integra, like it would have continued to evolve into exactly what it is now. Like, that is exactly what you should have expected. So that's, I could see it for some other stuff. I could see like a Mustang getting mad at a Mach-E for showing up or something like that. I still don't condone. I think that's still really petty, but at least with that, okay, I can kind of understand why you don't feel like it's, worthy of showing up at a Mustang meet or whatever. I still think it's ridiculous, but I can see the connection there. I don't see the thought process making any sense for Integra haters, but it's 2025. That's the world we live in. Anyway, positive here. I apologize for getting triggered all the time. But Steven says, do you have any idea when they'll show the US version of the 2026 EV3? I don't know. We're always a few months behind Korea on that kind of stuff. So it's probably, my guess is maybe LA Auto Show in November. If not, then, it's just going to be some random day they decide to post it up. But I believe it's a 2026 model year. So therefore, typically, especially Kia, they don't like to get behind the ball on model years. They're often very early to introduce model years. So either they're going to bump it to a 2027 if it shows up much after very early 2026 calendar year, or it's got to be sometime very soon. So I don't think you have to wait too much longer for that. But then again, I know EV4 is early 2026, and that's already been shown for its US version. So my thinking is EV3 will be 2027 model year here, and probably will have to come after EV4 is my guess. So that would put it, probably springtime would be my guess for when we get it at least. Now they could show it sooner, but I wouldn't expect it to actually go on sale at least until the spring. And Austin says, I heard Prelude is already sold out in Japan. Interesting. Well, they only said they're doing like 2,000 units, right, for the first run or something like that. It is kind of limited production. So, I mean, I guess the whole discussion we've been having, we had on Sunday about, MSRP is irrelevant because I can already smell the disgusting dealer markups from every Honda dealer a mile away. So, but yeah, I mean, if it's already sold out, I mean, I guess that shows that at least, I think it's 2,000, at least 2,000 people are very excited about it. And, it's an early success. Again, time will tell how it actually succeeds or doesn't, after the dust settles, but good to hear it's getting a solid reception in Japan, at least so far. Also, Japan is more open-minded than we are for sure. So, they're used to that kind of stuff and they're happy about something with 200 horsepower. So I think that it being a success in Japan, a lot of stuff's a success in Japan and, stuff that would never be sold here. So, we'll have to wait and see, once we finally get the US version. But I think people will be more excited once the Type R comes. But hopefully there's still a decent market for it here. And Danny says he forgot about his other spot this week, a 1992 Pontiac Grand Am GT in brilliant blue metallic. I'm impressed, the color. That's awesome. Seeing old Grand Ams or any Grand Am. I hardly ever see a Grand Am. I saw one in the junkyard. I did the video, which, by the way, anyone who's looking forward to the next one, I'm hoping to have the next one live at some point next week. So stay tuned for that. But in the one I posted a couple of weeks ago now, I saw a Grand Am there, but that's really the only place I see them for the most part. Unfortunately, I did see a GMC Envoy today, which I don't see those very often. So that was kind of interesting to see. And actually, I think that was when I was filming my POV video on this Genesis GV80 that I have currently. So you'll actually see it in that POV video. You'll also see today another funny thing. If you watch the Genesis GV80 POV video, which will be out, by the way, probably it'll probably be out. That'll be probably Wednesday or Tuesday, maybe, for that one. We'll see. My schedule's a little screwed up this week because of other things I have going on. So typically I do two car reviews a week, just for everyone, so everyone knows here for this week. By the way, there will not be any more car reviews. So the Sonata that posted on Monday is going to be the only thing. So we're just going to have this live, and then next video will be the next live here on Sunday. So stay tuned for car reviews next week once again. And but yeah, that's I also, when I was filming the POV video on the GV80, there was someone today who I was on a 4-lane road, and there's a intersection that was coming up, and this Lexus, I think it was a Lexus IS, if I remember correctly, they were turning on their left turn signal, and then they turned on their right turn signal, and then a left turn signal again, and then they just kept driving straight. And then they kept going for another mile or so, and then they finally turned left, but they were all kinds of confused, and I was like, man, they're struggling. Got to give them plenty of space for whatever they're doing next. But it was kind of funny. And Chad says BMW puts M badges on cars that shouldn't have them. Fair enough. Good point. That's funny. And let me see. Lance says M Sport, cough, cough. Right. Yeah. I mean, everyone's doing it though these days. And Michelle is impressed with Danny's spotting of the oldies there. It is impressive. And Danny says, my dad's side of the family had a 90s GM, had a bunch of 90s GM cars. My grandma had a 95 Chevy Lumina sedan. Grandfather had a 94 Bonneville and had a 92 Chevy Corsica sedan. And my dad had a 98 Cavalier. Wow. Yeah. You were definitely a GM family. That's awesome. Yeah. I remember all that stuff very well back in the day. It's fun times. Sorry, I missed the other two things that came in here. So first, Jorge, thank you so much for the super chat. He says the Bugatti Tourbillon is so expensive, but I hope it has a halo effect for Burton's switches, hideaway screens, and more retro moves or buttons. Yeah, I hope so too. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit, like with Audi. Audi has shown that new little, electric sports car thing that they're going to be, coming out with. They said it is going to be produced. And I mean, we'll see if it has all the same stuff as the concept, but the concept has that screen that, goes under the dash. And I love that. And I think that's great, especially for a sports car. So I think that's showing that is already having a trickle down effect. I mean, we're talking about an Audi that'll probably be, $100,000, but like, that's a start. We're going from, what are they, $4 million for a Bugatti now down to 100 grand, and I think hopefully that will be a trend that continues on. I agree. I think that would be great to see. Because I think some people just, want to have a kind of a digital detox in their car and not, be worried about anything more than maybe their music, but not having a giant iPad still there in their face. So I hope we see more of that. And thank you so much again for the super chat, Jorge. And Vishal, thank you so much for being a member for 17 months now. I really appreciate that. He says that IS you saw with the confused turn signal must have been having trouble turning it off since IS has the return to center turn signal stock. Interesting. Okay, maybe that explains it. They didn't have any kind of like temp tag in the window or anything. So, but yeah, maybe it's just a fairly new car and they're still figuring out how that works. So yeah, that's funny. Yeah, and I forgot, but yeah, I don't like those kinds of turn signals. They are a little bit tricky. Let me see here. Vishal's asking also thoughts on the 2026 Lexus IS refresh. Glad to see it live or live on, even if it's just another refresh. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I've really, assumed that IS was going to be pretty much gone, and we had heard, rumors of a next generation IS. Clearly, that's not happening for a while now. But I'm happy that they kept it around. And, again, I don't think they revealed pricing right. Because if we'll see how pricing is, but I'm assuming if it stays at where it's at, yes, it's a little smaller than basically everything it competes with, as far as interior space. It's a lot cheaper and it's a nice value, and it's also a solid platform. It's very proven now. It's been around since 2013 for this generation. And so giving it the touchscreen to modernize it, I think is good, even though I still really like the old design with the clock and everything. And the CD player, I think that might be gone now. But I'm just, I'm happy that it's now, been modernized to give it more appeal to those who do expect, a touchscreen in their, big luxury car and all that. But yeah, it sounds like the V6 is sticking around. Unfortunately, the V8 isn't sticking around. And that is sad. But it sounds like I saw one report saying there's a hybrid version now. I didn't go back and actually read the press release yet to get all the details. But it'd be nice. It sounds like the four-cylinder might be gone and the V6 is sticking around, and then there's going to be a hybrid. And they've never had hybrid for IS, I don't think. And so that's going to be great. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for that. I have to say, I think I prefer the, pre refresh. I like this last generation or the last, it's hard to keep track of all the refreshes, but the recent one here from the past couple of years, I think those look fantastic. I don't even think they needed to change it really. And I mean, it still looks fine on the front end, and the back end didn't really change anything, so that looks fantastic still. But I think it's great. I'm excited for it, and again, I'm just excited about the value that it hopefully will continue to provide. And it's a great car. They handle really well, and it sounds like they've made some little tweaks to that too. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it'll be great and a nice surprise. And Lance Wall says another 90s car I wanted was a Lumina Z34 or Beretta Z26. Yeah, those are cool cars too. And Luke says, I hear journalists often talk about weird feeling brake pedals in driving experiences in hybrids. However, my Maverick barely feels different from a regular car, minus a bit of electric torque from a stop. Yeah, and that's the sign of a good, calibration. I think Maverick, the Ford hybrid system in general, I also talked about this in the Escape. it every once in a while just feels a little wonky, but that's also, we all are in and out of cars every week, so we're always trying something different. With time, you can learn just about anything as long as it's consistent. And the Ford system is consistent, even if it can be a little rough around the edges compared to some of the others that maybe do, brake blending a little bit better. That was always my biggest driving complaint with the Mach-E, was the fact that the brakes were still tricky to be smooth with. But Beth drove for 3 years totally fine, and it's one of those things you learn how to, all the quirks of it and how to, manipulate it properly, and then it's fine. And so, yeah, I think once people actually own stuff, they can get used to it. And that's why, with reviews, you hear the complaints, and for some people that might be enough to be a deal breaker. Other people, maybe, they go and test drive it, that could be a deal breaker. But if it's a car you really like, most things are fine these days, and you can learn to live with them. There's very few things where it's, completely game over, like can never be adapted to, because most cars just overall all drive very, very well these days, generally speaking. And El Hokage says, subscribe since Subaru's fan days. And thank you so much for being subscribed all these years. I really appreciate the support. Yeah, thanks so much. And Raphael, thanks for stopping by. And Chad says, I finally understand why you always show the fob. They're priceless and better be nice. Pretty much, yeah. And also, just it's something that most others don't show. And I think a key fob is an important part of the ownership experience. I mean, it's just a key, but I think those little details do matter sometimes. And I just again think it's a fun thing that kind of it sets me apart from some of the others. I see Lee's Restoration Station says, just stopped in to say love you, Matt. Thanks so much for stopping by. I appreciate that, and hope you have a great rest of your night. Mr. 705 says, if you could go on a trip and get away from work, where would you like to go? There's so many places. It's hard to pick just one. Hawaii is probably my favorite place I've ever been to on planet Earth. Especially from a relaxation vacation kind of standpoint. So that's got to be, especially if I'm just trying to get away and relax. Yeah, Hawaii is a special place. It's very special. And yeah, so I think that would probably be the top one. There's also, so many other places I desperately would love to go to for the first time, and places I'd love to, return to. I love the UK. I desperately want to get back there. I'd love to explore more of Europe. I did, it was in Italy last year. That was, very exciting to be back there, but it's never enough time. I've always loved to go back and visit more. But I think for me, ultimate relaxation, Hawaii is probably one of the top spots for that. And Michelle says, thoughts on the new iPhones now after the reveal, upgrading or keeping your current phone? I'm still a little on the fence. After watching the, reveal and the specs and stuff, I've kind of came away a little bit meh. The front-facing camera, I think, is certainly a nice upgrade, and especially, since I am doing more phone content, and I could see where that could be, a nice perk, especially being able to do, horizontal stuff while holding the phone vertically. That's a very nice thing that specifically for me would be, very much handy to have. But they didn't talk about any improvements like video stabilization for the rear cameras. They didn't talk about any real video quality improvements. They're just talking about, the now shoots in ProRes RAW or whatever. And I don't do any of that crazy stuff. So I wish they would have talked more about the video performance. I'm guessing a lot of it just carries over from the 16, but I was kind of looking for more focus on what the video capabilities are, and there wasn't too much of that. They said, there's more dynamic range thanks to the extra, the larger sensors and extra megapixels. And I think, especially there are some shots now that I am filming most of my B-roll on the iPhone. There are some times where I use the wide angle lens, and you can, if you really look for it, you can notice a slight degradation in quality in those shots, especially in low light. And, so I'm on the fence. I feel like I'm probably going to go for it though still, just because the one that I actually want is the 19, because that's going to be the mostly all glass, kind of crazy design evolution that, is kind of like the iPhone 10 was when that came out. That's the one that I'm most excited for. It's going to have, an all screen front without any cutouts or anything. But that's 2 years away still. And because I use my phone so heavily for this job and stuff, having the bigger battery never hurts. Having, all the other features and stuff, it can't hurt. And especially I'm on the upgrade plan, so for me it's just like, it's rolled into my bill and I write, half of it off for taxes anyway and stuff. So I'm probably going to go for it. I'm still not 100%, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to go for it. I'm not, super excited about it or anything, but I think it'll be, good because it is a very essential tool for this job. And especially now, again, I use it more than I ever have for this channel. So I'm using it now, for the junkyard channel too. And other stuff, so I think, I'm probably going to end up upgrading here. I also find my 15 gets hot a lot. And so that vapor chamber cooling effect, I don't know how much of an effect it's actually going to cool, but that if the phone gets less hot, that would be a nice change as well. So I think I'm pretty much sold, but it took me a little while to get there. But I'm curious, Michelle, if you're excited about it or not. But Danny says that the car my dad really wanted but couldn't afford new was a 98 Cavalier Z24 Coupe. He could get was a base model Cavalier, which was $11,710 in 1998. Still cheap back then, and that would be about $23,200 now. Yeah, part of that is again just the simplicity. It's nice. Yeah, I see. He says also, remember I said the only requirement my dad wanted in a new car was a cassette player because he loved them in the late 90s. Yeah, cassettes. I mean, everyone wanted a cassette player back then for sure. I said back then everything was kind of simple and cheap. Absolutely. And Raphael says, Kirk says the IS500 is now gone with the new IS release. That makes me sad. Yep. Yeah, that's been confirmed. And that's what I kind of thought that was going to be the case because they showed us the IS500 Ultimate Edition, back in the spring. And the second I saw that, I'm like, oh, crap. Well, this is the final edition pretty much. And, they didn't confirm that, at that point in time. But I mean, there was no changes to it really to otherwise warrant a special edition. It was just, this is the end, I think is kind of, what that implied. And now that has turned out to be true. So get them while you can. That's a fantastic bargain still. I think they're like 65 grand for a wonderful sounding V8 luxury sports sedan. Yeah, I don't know why those things should be sold out with how awesome they are, and they seem to still be, fairly easy to get. So get them while you can. I'm sure now they'll be hard to get because everyone's going to run out now that they're on their way out. But Stratus Edge says, any updates on Slade? Haven't heard anything lately. Also, which scotch are you drinking nowadays? So as far as scotch, what is it called? It's downstairs. I had it. I was drinking it a few weeks ago. Whenever I finally drank a little bit in the one weekly up or the one live stream, I can't remember what it was. Because it's a word that's not like an English word, and I can't remember how to say it properly. I guess it is because it's Scotch, but it's some fancy word that I can't remember. But yeah, so that's the only one I've been drinking. I will maybe grab it next time, and I can show you if you're here on Sunday, Stratus Edge. Maybe we'll have a drink. But as far as updates on Slate, so Slate, I haven't heard anything new. I have zero new info, so unfortunately, I don't have any updates. I mean, they always said, I think, 2027, right, for when that's actually coming out. So it's going to be a whole lot of silence between now and then. And, I think it's just they're doing the hard work in the background now of making it a reality. And, hopefully it gets there. We'll see. And Chad says, do you think we'll ever get back to more fun/quirky cars like the late 90s, early 2000s, HHR, PT Cruiser, etc.? With the skateboard layout, it could be easier. Fiat is one of the last affordable quirky ones. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love the 500e that I have. As far as others, I mean, I think with enough time, again, everyone gets sentimental about everything, and there is always a retro appeal to stuff. We'll see. I mean, Chrysler has this big, onslaught of new product they're claiming is starting next year. I don't know if PT Cruiser is ready for a resurrection just yet. I would be down for it, but I think I'm in the minority. Most people these days it's very easy to hate on the PT Cruiser, even though it was a gigantic success by every measure. But I could see maybe, in the early 2030s or something, at that point we'd be, pretty much 30 years removed, which is so crazy to actually say. Because I remember when they were brand new, shiny on the showroom floor. My parents actually considered one. We test drove one whenever they bought their 2001 Volkswagen New Beetle. They considered PT Cruiser. We test drove it. My mom just didn't like the way it drove. But anyway, so, I think there's a possibility there again with a skateboard platform. And if you can tap into nostalgia and do it in a cool way, I could see, maybe like a boxier kind of PT Cruiser. Kind of looks maybe even a little bit more like HHR almost, or like a Honda Element type thing with the PT Cruiser thing. I don't know. I think there's a possibility for that. That's a fun idea. As far as others, Volkswagen consistently shoots down the idea of doing another Beetle again. And I mean, I think they're doing the people's car here for the future with the ID1, the ID2. I think those are going to be, really low cost and have 4 seats and 4 doors. And I guess maybe ID1 might be a 2 door. And I think ID2 might have a 2 door version. I can't remember. But, regardless though, like the extra practicality is important to people. But you're right. It's a skateboard platform. This is what I've said for years, ever since Volkswagen came out with their, EV platform. I'm like, this is easy. And yes, you might not sell a ton of them, but if you already have all the R&D work done on the platform and you literally just got to, put a Lego body over top of it and call it a day, like, why not? Especially with their heritage. I think it would still make sense. But they've consistently said it's not happening. It's not happening. So I don't think there's any of that. The other quirky thing, if you can consider it quirky, is the Nissan Xterra. Nissan has, basically said that's coming back. So that's going to be one, I think, that hopefully stay quirky. We'll see. But beyond that, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, doesn't seem like GM's planning on doing anything too quirky. So I don't know. Maybe Ford could do something, but it seems like they're just all truck minded. So I doubt it. So yeah, maybe Stellantis will be the one to do something fun. We'll see what happens. And happy to see at least Fiat, keeping it alive in the meantime. And I hope we see more of the Fiats that the rest of the world gets. I hope we get more of those here in the States too, because I think they're all quirky and fun. And I think that there is a market for that. And yeah, I mean, who knows? The 500 again is priced a little pricier than a lot of people want, but with the rebates and the discounts, it's a phenomenal deal until the end of this month at least. And I hope that it's they have some good discounts or something. But I'd love to see them get the price more in line with expectations, and then bring the 600 over, which is the 4 door version, and make it more practical. And I think that might have a little bit more success for those who do want something fun, because we could all use, I think, a little more fun in these crazy times we're living in. So hopefully more companies have that bravery. We'll see. Jordan says EV range is a factor when trying to get ICE car owners to switch, but I also think there's a fear of a cyber interference attack that could render some EVs immobile, and an ICE car could keep on trucking. And I see Dozier is saying that ICE cars are rolling computers. Yeah, they're all. I mean, it's software. Whether you have the software. I mean, because like every gas car these days is throttle by wire. Some of them are going to brake by wire too. So, but especially throttle is the thing you're really worried about. And throttle by wire is, I think, on everything. I don't know of anything that actually has a cable throttle new. There might be one or two things like a Lotus Evora or something, maybe. I don't even know if that even has it, or whatever, the Amira. But I don't even think, I don't know if there's anything. There's maybe one or two, but I don't think there's anything with an actual hydraulic brake pedal anymore. So so I mean, that is huge. I mean, also steer by wire is getting more and more common. I mean, so all those things happen no matter whether you're talking gas or electric. So I don't think there's anything there. Maybe there's some misinformation out there that makes people anti-EV stuff that's trying to make that seem like a unique threat to EVs, but no, everything is super software based these days, so that's an issue no matter what's powering it. And let me see. Flacco Channel says, do you think they'll bring back the Mazda RX and the Celica? I think so. I mean, Celica, they have, really heavily teased that. And I think one of the Toyota executives was like, yeah, we're going to do it. So I'm pretty sure, unless I'm getting that confused with the MR2 talk, but I'm pretty sure Celica is coming back. I don't know anything, and I wish I did, but um, you know, how soon it comes, I don't know. I don't think we've seen anything spied or anything that would suggest there's anything super close, but it sounds like it's something they want to do. As far as the RX, that also, the thing we saw in Tokyo 2 years ago, that they're working on. They said like they are working towards production for that car. Again, how soon, I don't know. But I think both of them will come eventually. And we've actually just hit the 1 hour mark, so we will. And sorry, I missed the other super chats there, Jordan and Chad. So we'll hit those, and then we'll go to just the member questions here, and then we will sign off. But Jordan, thank you for the super chats. He says, was Garmin Nav ever integrated into infotainment? Yeah, Garmin is in Subaru. I think they were in a couple others as well, but I don't recall who else, but I know Subaru runs Garmin currently. And also Jordan says thanks or are there super thanks on old Burks fan videos? Does that go to you? Oh yeah, I mean it's all still the same channel. So any ad revenue, anytime those videos are watched, they're all still monetized. Super chats and super thanks, whatever, all that stuff is absolutely, it's all the same account. So that all goes to me for sure. The only way any monetization wouldn't go to me anymore is if I don't upload for 6 months. If you don't upload at least once every 6 months, YouTube takes away your monetization, which is why even if anything were to ever happen to me, there would always be at least one video every 6 months from Beth or whoever, just to keep the monetization coming in, because I refuse to let Google collect 100% of all my hard work. So that'll be definitely something. There will be something posted. I don't know what it is or what it'll be, but even if it's just a little quick update or something like that, I think this channel will hopefully stick around for a long time, no matter what. But yeah, thankfully, and hopefully YouTube changes that policy some days, because I feel like even we've seen, unfortunately, some YouTubers that aren't here anymore, and I think it's important for their families to be able to still get the fruits of that person's hard work. And so I hope that's something they reconsider at some point down the road, as long as there's an active person that checks in on the account and stuff. I feel like the money should be going to who made the content. But yeah, as far as I know, that's the way it goes currently on YouTube. And Chad, also, thank you for a super chat. He says, Subaru electrifying, bring back Baja's electric. That'd be fun. I'd love to see that. They could take the Uncharted that they have, throw a truck bed on the back of that, take the Trail Seeker, throw a truck bed on the back of that. Again, it's all easy. They could do it to literally every single crossover that they make in the Subaru lineup. Every single one could have the Baja treatment. I actually was thinking about these are the kinds of things I think about in the shower sometimes. I was just thinking the other day in the shower, like, not only can they just have Baja, I think Baja should be the Outback version, and then you have Brat as the Crosstrek based one. I think that would be great to bring back the Brat, and I think that would actually be an okay name, a fun name to use. And it would kind of fit, a little trucky Crosstrek, call it the Brat. I think that would 100% fit. Now, they probably couldn't put the jump seats in the truck bed like they did to avoid the chicken tax back in the day. But, I mean, maybe they could. So they actually still avoid the chicken tax. I don't know. But I love that idea. Yeah, I think that'd be great. If they can't do it with the gas stuff, or they won't do it with the gas stuff, here's a new blank slate. Do it with the electric stuff. Could help get people excited about the EVs as well. And yeah, great idea, Chad. Thank you for the super chat. And all right, last few questions here. So I see Dom's asking if we talked about the purple Jag. We haven't, but I don't know. I haven't seen a purple Jag. Maybe if it's a new version of the Jag concept, I'll have to check that out. Thanks for the heads up, Dom. And let me see here. Lancelot says, though, to be honest, I wouldn't mind having a BMW M55i X-Drive. Yeah, I mean, BMW makes a lot of great stuff for sure. They have some very good cars. And Chad says, with all the resources available and foreseeable trends, it's crazy that dealers still get away with markups. It only makes sense for super rich to me. Just wait a year and it'll go down. Short-term memory loss nationwide. I think it's just supply and demand. It's a good old supply and demand exercise. Because if people quit paying it, dealers would quit doing it. They don't want to have stuff sitting on the lot forever. Now, there's occasionally with some really special cars where they'll wait a year or two for some sucker to come in and finally pay some giant price tag. But markups exist because people pay for them. People pay the markups, and so they keep doing it. It's a self-fulfilling thing. If you don't like markups, don't ever pay one. And I think for a lot of people, you have a lot of people that have money to burn. And even with a Prelude, you have a lot of people. I mean, we saw this with Z. There was people that did go and pay the markups because they had to have the first one. They had the money to burn, or they were super excited about it. Whatever the case is. But it's just it's completely avoidable. There are dealers for every car company in the country there's at least one dealer that doesn't do markups. I'm sure there's many more than one, but like there are dealers where you can avoid markups. I said this with GR Corolla. I said this with Civic Type R. I said this with everything. There are dealers that don't have markups. And so you just have to be flexible enough and have the free time, admittedly, as well, to travel, get out of your comfort zone. So many people say, well, my local dealer 3 miles away, they have markups, so guess I'm not buying the car. It's like, get out of your little bubble, like go, 5, 10, 15 miles. You don't have to go to the other side of the country. Like just expand your search radius and, put in a little bit of effort and you'll probably be able to avoid it. And instead, like people are like, oh, I'm not buying a GR Corolla because every dealer, in my state, has markups. Okay, well, go to the next state over. We have 50 of them to pick from. It's just, anyway, that always triggered me because you can avoid markups. They are not a fact of life. You can avoid them. And with enough time, supply eventually will go beyond demand. And, whenever that equilibrium hits and you start to, find that sweet spot, then that's when, okay, dealers aren't treating these things like Ferraris anymore. We can finally, have some reasonable pricing. And, that's when you start to see sales. We see this with Z. There was a ton of markups in the first year or two. You had a few crazy people that paid them. And then no one saw Z. I didn't see one on the road outside of my press car for, a year or more after launch. And I think, last year, I think I maybe saw like less than 5 the entire year. This year, I've seen, maybe closer to 10, not a ton still. I think they really hurt the momentum of that car by the way they packaged it and the dealers, just souring so many people who ended up buying something else instead. But, I think that we're starting to slowly see Z sales, grow a lot. And that's because we finally hit the point where Z isn't the hot new thing anymore. It's been out for a few years. Dealers are finally getting realistic and getting their head out of the clouds. And so, you actually have some real transactions finally happening. But that's what it takes for some of these dealers. And Vishal thinks that Honda might have used Garmin for a while. I'm not sure. I don't recall if they did or not. Lancelot says, I can't remember exactly when I subscribed to you. You were still Super Dirks fan. It's been at least 10 years. Still love your channel. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate all the decade of support. It's always crazy to think about. So I really appreciate that, Lancelot. He says, did you get to see the Big Mo when you were in Hawaii? I was in Kona. I don't think I did because I don't know what that is. And I honestly, I really didn't have a whole lot of time to relax because it was on the Toyota Grand Highlander event, which was also the launch of the Tacoma. So there's so much work between covering all the zillions of trims for the Tacoma and also Grand Highlander. I had one free day that Toyota gave us, and a lot of people went out and did fun stuff. I was just catching up on editing and I was working on the next weekly update and all that kind of stuff. So I unfortunately, didn't have much time at the end of my workday. I mean, I was sitting on a balcony staring out into the ocean. So, I mean, a really nice workday. But, I was at the end of the day able to go and dip my toes in the water and sit on the beach for a few minutes. But that was the extent of, actually like beach time and stuff like that. But we had an awesome epic luau that Toyota did when we were there. And again, just exploring, the local roads and, coffee shops and all kind of stuff was also very fun, even if it was while I was working. But I'd love to go back without work and just, have some fun on my own time sometime. Um, but Mr. 705 says, do you think the push to get the Hemi back in the Ram, that they will have reliability issues? Seems like almost every truck brand has issues these days. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, with the rush with the software component. Yeah, because I am a little concerned because that's still the thing. And I think I talked about this not so long ago in another live stream. This is going to still be a thing because if they're still working out the bugs, they might have gotten all the bugs worked out of the Rams by now because it's been at least a year at this point. Actually, it's been a year and a half really for this new generation Ram. So I'm hoping everything's been sorted out. I haven't followed the whole Ram saga to know, but what I can say is that yes, it's a new software, and if there are any bugs still outstanding or new bugs introduced by adding in that V8, like you're, asking, I think, the V8 is a known quantity. So hopefully they have worked out most of the bugs, but it's possible. And again, any of the other RAM issues, like I had issues, with the one that I had, the 6-cylinder one, but the engine was fine. It was just that I had issues with, speaker rattle and, the autonomous, semi-autonomous, steering assist that didn't work. So cruise control completely failed on me. There was other issues that were engine independent, and then if they haven't fixed that stuff, I feel like they must have at this point. But if they haven't, those are the kinds of things that, will still be an issue with the V8. I don't know if the V8 will add anything new, but any of the other stuff that maybe is still happening. I mean, the V8 also wasn't a perfect V8. There were people that I believe had lifter issues on that Hemi motor. So I don't think it's really the most reliable V8 in the world either. But people are excited about it. Again, I'm still just disappointed because I think Ram sold us hard on the 6-cylinder is the better way, because it is. And I agreed with them, and I still stand by it. Even if they don't stand by that anymore, I still stand by that. It was the best way to do a 1500 size truck. It's just better in all the ways, aside from sound. But I just, I was excited about progress, and, then they decided to hit pause on the progress, and that's just unfortunate. So I'm not excited about the V8 Ram, but we'll see. Hopefully they've worked out the kinks, though, for those who are excited about it. And let me see. Why-ish, thank you also. Sorry, also, Jordan, I missed your other super chat. He says, Jordan says, consider AI glasses to record the Junkyard channel. Yeah, I know, like, a lot of people are using the Meta Ray-Bans or whatever. And I think there was a Drive program that gave them out. I don't recall which one it was. It wasn't one that I was on, but I think a lot of the car YouTubers got them for free on an event. Yes, would have been a nice one to be on, but it's it is what it is, because they're expensive. I don't think I can justify it. I did buy the Snapchat spectacles way back when, like 2016. So I did try that. And I was excited about that for POV videos way back when. But I never really found a whole lot of uses for it. Nowadays, I might find a few more uses for that. But as far as the junkyard stuff, those POV, cameras and those glasses are very wide angle, so it's not the best. Whenever you see me filming in the junkyard there, I'm getting close up, I'm moving the camera in closer, I'm looking at odometers, I'm peeking in on interiors and things like that. It would be a whole lot easier for a filming thing, but also they have limitations on how long you can record for. I think it's 60 seconds. So, it'd be fine for short form stuff, but, wouldn't actually work for my uses for long form. But yeah, could be a fun way to do things in the future if the pricing comes down on them. And YH, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, my Stang GT does just one pop. How do I make it sound like the 4th of July Canada Day? I want it to sound like pow, 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 pow. You're going to need a tune that makes it run a whole lot richer. And there's just burble tunes you can do. I know they're out there. Maybe not for S650. I feel like it's got to be at this point, since they've cracked the ECU, there's got to be a burble tune. It would not be a Ford thing, though. So if you want it to be a Ford, warranted kind of really good, tune, you're going to not have that. There's no way to do that aside from tuning it that way. Because some cars naturally will have, a lot of backfire, but not as much as you probably want, it sounds like. So I think you're going to have to do a burble tune if you can get one for the S650. That'd be the way to do it. I see also he says 1st of July as Canada Day. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's probably the only way you can do it though. Thank you so much for the super chat. And all right, last few questions here. Jordan says, I predict a YouTube mobile device. I know Google has the Pixel phone and also owns YouTube, but if marketing is done right, directed to creators, it would sell. I mean, if they had a super creator focused phone, possibly, but I think with the YouTube app, I don't really know what else YouTube could do to make a phone more creator friendly beyond what we have already. I'm sure maybe someone creative can come up with something, but yeah, I don't really. The only thing, here's the thing. Okay, the first company that cracks this is going to be golden in my mind. If you can get a phone that also can deploy propellers and turn itself into a mini drone that is 100% reliable with tracking, with flying, and with safety, that that would be a huge deal, because that's the one thing that would be nice is a lot of the stuff, again, like the junkyard, I do that entirely on the iPhone. But it'd be really cool to get a drone shop, and instead of carrying around a backpack and having a drone and having to set it up and stuff, if I could just literally like throw my phone up in the air and it like catches itself and starts flying around, like we're talking some real future stuff. But like that's like, to me, the only thing other than what we currently have that I would think would add a lot of value to creators. If I can throw my phone in the air, it catches itself, starts flying around, and starts following me like a built-in cameraman, pretty much. That's like some next level stuff. Or even if it's not like, it doesn't have to be high speed to chase a car or something, but even if it can just, if I could do a junkyard thing and say, or even do a stand up and say, I want to, have a mobile cameraman. If you could have, the phone turn into a drone and be a mobile cameraman for you to follow you around when you're pointing at wheels and hubcaps and, various other, badges and stuff, that would be like next gen, like, high tech kind of stuff. That's the only dream. I thought about that the other day. I'm like, man, I really wish I could just, have a phone intelligently follow me around. But that's the only thing. I think if YouTube can figure that out, then I'll switch from iPhone, because that would be amazing. But I don't know if it's going to happen. But Michelle says, my parents' first new car when they came back to the U.S. in 1998 was a 99 Civic LX. It was 14 grand. We had it till 2010 and passed it down to a family member that needed a car. Well, that's awesome that it lasted you, a nice long while there, and hopefully your family member got a lot of use out of it too. But that's a great first car. Hondas are great. It's really, so many people, I think, just Honda and Toyota did such a good thing for the car world by just greatly advancing reliability and getting us out of this crappy, like, well, your car's gonna last 100,000 miles if you're lucky, which was the norm before the Japanese really arrived on the scene for the most part. And I'm so happy that the Japanese really advanced us to the next level as far as car durability. And Vishal says also he likes the new iPhones overall. I'm sad there's no Plus model anymore, so I'll be keeping my 15 Plus for longer. Which one would you get? I'd probably go for the Pro. If I wasn't on YouTube, I'd go for the Air. I love the form factor. But I think if the Air had all the cameras and all the performance of the Pro, which obviously you can't do from a space standpoint, but if that was the case, it was just like you could have the thin one or the thicker one and have a bigger battery, and that's the only difference between the two of them. If that was the only difference, I would have gone for the Air and done the MagSafe, on the back battery pack. But because there's just so many compromises with the cameras, it's just something that I use. The wide angle, I use the zoom on a regular basis. Having both of those is very important for me, so it's a no deal for me on the Air for that reason. But I love the form factor. I'm excited to try it out at the Apple Store and feel hopefully what the future holds. Yeah, and I guess that's kind of taking the place of the Plus in a way. But yeah, it's a shame that they don't have the Plus still. And Michelle says, new segment for the live shower thoughts with Matt. Yeah, right. Yep. That's the kind of stuff my mind wander on sometimes. I come up with some of my best ideas in the shower. But let me see. Chad says that thanks for the super chat, Chad. He says it sounds like something from Aeon Flux. I don't know what that is, but if you're talking about the phone idea, yeah. I hope someone gets there someday. We'll see. Although I feel like by the time we get to by the time we get to the point of technology getting to that level, we'll probably all just be wearing VR goggles everywhere we go. So maybe that'll be something that never happens. I don't know. We'll see. But let me see. Chad says, living in the Florida Panhandle, it's almost common knowledge to go to Mobile, Alabama for cheaper prices, usually thousands cheaper. That's crazy. Well, yeah, glad that you're able to get those cheaper prices one way or another, and glad you're able to drive for it too. And Jordan says, thanks for the live. Last question. I really like the 2019 Buick Regal GS Sportback. I see some available on Carvana and CarMax. Are those companies considered pre-owned certified? They might have their own like certification program, but they are not OEM certified. You only get GM certified at a GM dealer. So you're gonna have to buy from a Buick dealer to get that. CarMax though does offer some very stout certification, I think, and I think they offer extended warranties and stuff too. Carvana is a little iffy. I hear mixed stuff. Some people have good experiences with them, other people have not so great experiences. But CarMax is huge, so I mean I think that would be a pretty safe bet there. I've never dealt with them, so I'm not endorsing them or anything, but hopefully that would be a pretty solid experience here. Let me see. Lancelot says BB-63 Battleship Missouri. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but yeah, you can send me a DM on Instagram later, Chad. But let me see. Chad, also the other Chad here says, thanks for another great chat. We love this community. Thank you so much for stopping by and for all the super chats and all the support and all the great conversation here. I always appreciate it too. And I see Jordan says, always end the live with a consolation plug. Well, thank you so much for the support, Jordan. And I see YH also says, I need a 4 drone I can quickly deploy to see which lanes are closed. Yeah, I always thought that'd be a great idea too. I think it's a Seinfeld episode, right, where they have like the periscope that goes up so you can see where traffic's being blocked or whatever. But yeah, it'd be nice to be able to see ahead sometimes like that. And also, yeah, see if there are any fast cars nearby, so I can give them the belt. You stay safe out there, YH. And Dan says, we use big drones with LiDAR sensors for 3D topography surveys at work. We could probably pick you up with it, and you can just hold your phone in your hand. There we go. Perfect. That's sounds like a wild idea. We could have some Iron Man level stuff going on with that. That's fun, Dan. That's pretty cool. It sounds like you do some fun work there. And Jordan says, thanks, Matt. 2-hour live next Wednesday. Probably not. Fortunately, I'm just far too busy. After I'm done with these lives, I get right back to work. I'm usually working until midnight or so every night. So yeah, I keep the 2-hour ones here to Sundays. But thank you so much again. Hope you guys enjoyed this 1-hour one and 1 hour and 21 minutes technically now. But thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, stay healthy out there. And I'll see you guys on Sunday for the next live stream. Take care and have a great rest of your week.